"Where shall we go? We have no shelter," the Apache mother pleaded to the rancher, unaware he was. The sun was high and harsh over the Arizona desert, casting long, sharp shadows across the cracked earth. The wind carried the dry scent of sagebrush and the faint, dusty smell of distant cattle. In the distance, the small ranch house sat alone, its wooden boards bleached almost white by years under the relentless sun. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, a signal that someone lived there, though the air around it seemed still and quiet. The land was empty, except for the occasional grazing cow and the wide, endless sky that made the desert feel even more immense. Across this open land, a small figure moved slowly, stumbling over rocks and dry brush. She was a woman, her skin bronzed by the sun, and her hair tangled and streaked with dust. Her face was lined with exhaustion, her eyes tired yet sharp with a determination that could not be ignored. In her arms, she held a tiny bundle of blankets and cloth, and beside her, 2 children walked carefully, their small feet kicking up puffs of dust with each step. Their clothes were worn and torn, patched repeatedly in places, and their faces carried the same mixture of fatigue and fear as their mothers. The woman paused for a moment, looking out at the distant ranch house. Her heart beat faster, and she tightened her grip on her youngest child. "Where shall we go?" she whispered under her breath. The words were not for anyone to hear but herself, a plea into the empty air of the desert. She had been traveling for days with her children, moving quietly and carefully, trying to avoid soldiers, settlers, and anyone who might see them and bring trouble. They had no home now. Their village had been destroyed, their people scattered. Every step forward was a gamble, a decision that could mean safety or disaster. Finally, she straightened her back and began walking again. The ranch house grew larger in the distance, its details sharper now. She could see the wooden fence that enclosed a small corral and a few cattle grazing lazily. The smell of wood smoke mixed with the dry earth reached her, and she realized that she had to try, even though she did not know what to expect. She approached the gate slowly, her voice shaking slightly as she called out. "Please," she said, her voice carrying across the open land, soft yet firm. "Please, we have nowhere to go. We need shelter." The rancher appeared on the porch almost immediately, a man with a broad, sun-weathered face, wearing a wide-brimmed hat that shadowed his eyes. His hands rested on the railing as he studied the woman and the children carefully. He did not speak at once. He only watched, taking in every detail: the children's worn clothing, the woman's tired stance, the desperation in her eyes. He had seen travelers before, but there was something different about this group. He could sense the fear that hung around them, like a thin, invisible cloak. The woman stepped closer to the gate. "We have no shelter," she repeated, her voice breaking slightly. "We are hungry and tired. Please, can you help us?" The rancher remained silent for a moment longer, his mind working quickly. He had lived in this land for many years. He knew it was dangerous to take in strangers, especially ones who might be running from soldiers or trouble. There were people in town who would not approve, who might even come to harm him if they discovered someone like her hiding on his property. And yet, he could see the sincerity in her eyes. There was no trickery, no hidden threat, only a desperate mother protecting her children. Finally he spoke, his voice low but calm. "Come closer," he said, stepping down from the porch, "but you must stay where I can see you." The woman hesitated, weighing the words carefully. Then, slowly, she stepped forward, keeping her children close. The little boy clung to her skirt while the older child walked beside her, his small hand holding a piece of cloth that served as a makeshift toy. They moved cautiously, aware of the rancher's watchful gaze. As they reached the gate, the rancher looked at them more closely. He noticed the sunburn on their skin, the dust that coated their hair and clothes, and the thinness of the children's arms and legs. He could see the marks of hunger and fatigue, and something inside him shifted. He had lived a long life on this land, and he had seen much suffering, but seeing it up close, seeing it in the eyes of a mother and her children, brought a weight he could not ignore. "Why are you here?" he asked, keeping his tone neutral but gentle. "Where did you come from?" The woman's voice trembled slightly as she spoke. "Our village, it was destroyed. We had to leave. There is nowhere for us to go. Please, we are only trying to survive." The rancher nodded slowly, understanding her words without needing more explanation. He knew the history of the land, the conflicts, the violence that had scattered families and communities. He had seen it himself, though he had tried to leave that life behind. Yet here it was, in front of him, demanding attention. He stepped aside slightly, opening the gate. "You may stay for now," he said, "but you must understand. You stay at your own risk. I cannot promise anything beyond this land." The woman's eyes filled with tears, but she held them back. She knelt briefly, thanking him with a quiet bow of her head. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you for helping us." The rancher motioned for the children to follow, and they walked slowly into the small yard. He led them toward an old barn at the edge of the property. It was not a luxurious place, but it offered shelter from the sun and wind. Inside, he found a corner where they could rest, and he placed a few old blankets on the ground. The woman helped her children lie down, brushing dust from their hair and smoothing their clothes as best she could. As they settled, the rancher watched from the doorway, his mind a storm of thoughts. He was a man who had chosen a quiet life, away from the conflicts of the past. But now he realized that the past was never far away. It followed him in unexpected ways, demanding that he make choices he had hoped to avoid. The woman looked up at him, her eyes filled with cautious hope. "We will not cause trouble," she said softly. "We only need a place to rest, to eat, and to be safe for a while." The rancher nodded. "You may have that," he replied, "but you must understand I cannot hide you from everyone. You must be careful, and so must I." There was no shame in accepting help, but there was also the knowledge that danger still existed. She looked at her children, who were beginning to close their eyes despite the heat and dust, and she felt a deep, protective determination. She would keep them safe, no matter what. As the sun began to dip toward the horizon, casting long, golden shadows across the desert, the rancher returned to his porch. He sat in his chair, watching the sky change colors, thinking about the choices he had made and the ones he would have to make. He did not speak, and neither did the woman, but in the quiet, a fragile understanding began to grow between them, a bond of necessity, of humanity, and of shared recognition of the hardships life could bring. Night fell slowly over the desert, cooling the air and bringing with it the quiet sounds of the land. Crickets chirped, the wind whispered through the brush, and the children slept, exhausted but safe for the first time in days. The woman sat beside them, keeping watch, her hands resting gently on their shoulders. "We are grateful for what you have done. I will make sure my children do not bring attention to themselves. We will stay quiet, and we will be careful." The rancher nodded. He could see that she was resourceful and determined, capable of keeping her children safe even under difficult circumstances. Yet he could not ignore the unease growing in his chest. He had lived a long time in this land, and he knew that trouble could come at any moment, often without warning. As they spoke, The wind shifted, carrying a faint sound across the yard. The rancher paused, listening carefully. There was nothing obvious, but he sensed the faintest trace of movement in the distance. It could have been the wind, or perhaps a distant rider. He did not alarm the family, but his mind worked quickly, considering what to do if danger approached. The mother watched him carefully, noticing the slight tension in his posture. She could sense his concern, though he did not speak of it. In that moment, she realized that he was more than just a rancher. He had knowledge of the land, of the dangers that could appear, and of how to respond. She felt a deep sense of gratitude and cautious trust. Evening approached, and the desert sky turned shades of pink and purple. The children were asleep, and the mother prepared a small dinner. The rancher remained on the porch, keeping watch over the property. The quiet moments allowed them to reflect, each aware of the fragility of the peace they had found. As night fell, the wind picked up slightly, rustling the dry brush and carrying the distant sounds of the desert. The mother sat beside her children, keeping watch, while the rancher lit a lantern on his porch. He could see the outline of the barn, the faint glow of the fire inside, and he felt a sense of responsibility settle over him. These people depended on him, and he could not ignore that duty. Despite the peaceful evening, both the mother and the rancher knew that challenges lay ahead. The desert was a harsh place, and the world beyond the ranch could be unforgiving. Soldiers might pass through, settlers could question their presence, and the family's safety was not guaranteed. Yet, in this small corner of the world, there was a fragile sense of hope. The mother's thoughts turned to the days ahead. She knew she would need to find a more permanent solution for her family. This ranch offered shelter, but it was not a lasting home. She would need to teach her children patience, caution, and resilience. She would need to prepare them for the challenges that lay beyond the barn's walls. The rancher, too, reflected on the days ahead. He had taken a risk by offering shelter, and he knew that more risks might come. Yet he felt a growing sense of purpose in protecting this family. It was a small act of courage, a quiet resistance against the hardships of the world. He could not change the past, but he could influence the present, offering safety and guidance where he could. As the stars appeared in the clear desert sky, the rancher and the mother shared a silent understanding. They were both aware of the dangers, yet they chose to act with compassion and courage. Their trust was fragile, but it existed, and it was enough to sustain them for the moment. Night settled over the ranch, and the desert became a quiet, watchful place. The mother kept her children close, whispering gentle words of comfort, while the rancher remained vigilant, scanning the horizon for any sign of trouble. In that stillness there was a sense of unity, a quiet bond forged by necessity, trust, and shared recognition of the challenges they faced. And so, under the vast, star-filled sky, life at the small Arizona ranch continued. The family found shelter, safety, and a brief respite from the hardships of the world, while the rancher grappled with the responsibilities he had taken on. In this fragile balance, there was hope, a hope that even in a harsh and unpredictable land, trust, courage, and humanity could prevail, at least for a little while. The morning sun rose slowly, casting long shadows across the desert landscape. The ranch was quiet, the cattle grazing lazily under the warmth of the sun. The mother and her children had awakened early, their movements careful and deliberate. They had learned to live cautiously, aware of the dangers that could appear at any moment. The barn offered a small measure of safety, but they knew it could not protect them forever. The rancher stepped outside, scanning the horizon. He had sensed the tension growing over the past few days. The desert was never entirely quiet, and he had learned to notice the smallest signs of trouble, a distant cloud of dust, the sound of hooves, or a change in the wind carrying faint voices. He knew that someone might come looking for the family he had taken in, whether soldiers or settlers who distrusted strangers. As the morning passed, a faint sound reached his ears, almost imperceptible over the breeze. He paused, straining to listen. There it was again, a soft crunching of dirt underfoot, the distant sound of hooves moving quickly. He felt a tight knot form in his chest. Something was approaching. He motioned for the mother to stay in the barn. "You must stay inside with the children," he said quietly. "Do not make a sound. Whatever comes, remain calm." The mother nodded, understanding immediately. She gathered her children close, holding them silently as they crouched in the shadows. The older child clutched a small blanket, while the younger one rested against her mother's side. Their eyes were wide, reflecting fear, but also trust in the rancher. The sound grew louder, and soon the rancher could see dust rising in the distance. 3 men on horseback appeared, their hats low and their expressions stern. They rode with purpose, scanning the land as they approached the ranch. The rancher recognized the danger immediately. These were not travelers seeking rest. They were men who might question him, who might suspect he was hiding someone. He took a deep breath, steadying himself. There was no time for hesitation. He needed to act quickly to protect the family, and he knew that careful planning could prevent violence. He decided to meet the men at the gate, keeping a calm but authoritative presence. As the men approached, he raised his hand in greeting. "Good morning," he said, his voice steady. "What brings you out here?" One of the men, the apparent leader, narrowed his eyes. "We heard that someone was hiding in these parts," he said. "Is there anyone here who should not be?" "No one is here except my family and myself," he replied. "You are welcome to look around, but you will find nothing to concern you." The man on the horse glanced toward the barn, suspicious, but the rancher continued, his voice calm and firm. "You are free to pass. This is private property, and I ask that you respect it. There is no need for trouble." For a moment, tension filled the air. The wind seemed to pause, the desert holding its breath. The men on horseback studied the rancher, their eyes sharp, searching for any sign of dishonesty. The rancher stood his ground, radiating quiet confidence. He did not flinch, and he did not allow fear to show. Finally, the leader nodded slightly. "We will leave," he said, though his tone remained wary. "But we will be watching. Anyone seen coming or going from this ranch will be reported." The rancher watched as the men rode away, their dust cloud disappearing into the horizon. He let out a long breath, feeling the tension in his shoulders ease slightly. He had managed the encounter without violence, but he knew it was only a temporary reprieve. The desert was full of people who might question his actions, and he could not assume safety for long. Inside the barn, the mother exhaled slowly. She held her children tightly, feeling the weight of fear mixed with relief. "Thank you," she whispered to the rancher, her voice trembling slightly. "Ah, you saved us." The rancher nodded, though he did not offer words of comfort. He was thinking ahead, planning for the days to come. He knew that these men might return, and he needed a strategy to protect the family if they did. The desert offered few options, but he had learned to use the land to his advantage. Every ridge, every thicket, every dry creek bed could serve as a hiding place or a path to safety. He spent the next few hours preparing. He moved barrels and crates near the barn, creating barriers that could shield the family if necessary. He checked the fences, ensuring that the cattle were secure and would not draw unwanted attention. He taught the mother and the children to stay quiet, to watch for any signs of approaching danger and to remain calm under pressure. As the afternoon sun climbed higher, the family began to feel a sense of cautious normalcy. The children played quietly near the barn, their laughter subdued but present. The mother worked on simple chores, gathering firewood and tidying the space, while the rancher continued his preparations. There was a rhythm to the day, a fragile balance between vigilance and the need for sustenance and rest. Yet even in these quiet moments, the threat lingered. The rancher knew that the men who had passed through were only one of many potential dangers. Soldiers, settlers, and wandering travelers could arrive at any time. He could not predict their intentions, and he could not rely on luck alone. He needed to be ready for any eventuality. As evening approached, the desert sky turned brilliant shades of orange and purple. The mother prepared a simple meal for her children, using the fire she had learned to control carefully. The rancher watched from the porch, his eyes scanning the horizon. He felt a deep sense of responsibility for the family, a protective instinct that overrode fear or hesitation. He had faced danger before in his past life, but this was different. These were innocent lives, dependent on his decisions and actions. Night fell, and the desert became cooler. The stars appeared in the sky, twinkling like tiny beacons of hope. The rancher lit a lantern on the porch, casting a warm glow over the yard. He could see the mother and her children inside the barn, safe for the moment, but still vulnerable. He felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders, but he did not shrink from it. He would protect them, no matter the cost. Suddenly, a noise reached his ears, a faint rustling almost imperceptible over the night wind. He stiffened, moving silently toward the barn. His instincts were sharp, honed from years of experience. He could not afford to ignore even the smallest sound. The mother noticed his movement and whispered to the children to stay still. She trusted him completely, though she did not know the full extent of his knowledge or skills. He crouched near the barn door, listening carefully, and then peered into the darkness. A small figure moved among the shadows, cautious and deliberate. The rancher recognized it as one of the men from earlier, returning to check the property. He did not panic. Instead, he acted quickly and quietly. He moved to a position where he could be seen clearly, signaling to the man that he was aware of his presence. "You should leave," he called, his voice calm but firm. "This is private property. You are not welcome here." The man hesitated, uncertain. "Dept Nora." The rancher took a step forward, showing confidence and authority. The intruder finally nodded, muttering something under his breath before retreating into the darkness. The rancher watched until the figure disappeared completely, ensuring the family remained safe. Inside the barn, the mother let out a quiet sigh of relief. She held her children close, feeling gratitude and admiration for the man who had protected them so courageously. She did not know the details of his past, but she understood his character through his actions. He was a man of courage, of integrity, and of quiet strength. The rancher returned to the porch, his eyes scanning the horizon one last time for any signs of trouble. He knew that challenges were not over, that the desert held many dangers, and that the family's safety was never guaranteed. Yet he also knew that he had acted wisely and decisively. He had protected them today, and that mattered. As the night deepened, the desert settled into a calm silence. The family slept peacefully, their trust in the rancher growing with every passing moment. The mother watched over them, feeling a mix of relief and hope. She knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges, but for now, they were safe. And so, under the vast, star-filled sky, the rancher and the family he had taken in endured the night. Together, The desert was harsh and unpredictable, but in this small corner of the world, courage, strategy, and compassion had created a fragile haven. It was a reminder that even in the face of danger, acts of bravery and kindness could prevail, if only for a little while. The next morning, the desert air was cool and crisp, a welcome change from the heat of the previous days. The sky was pale blue, and the sun began to rise slowly, painting the landscape with soft gold. The rancher stepped outside, his boots crunching over the dry dirt. His eyes scanned the horizon as always, alert and careful. The night had been quiet, but he knew that calm could never last long in these lands. Danger often came suddenly, and he had learned to prepare for it. Inside the barn, the Apache mother stirred quietly, careful not to wake her children. They had slept peacefully, which was a small miracle in the harsh desert. She brushed the hair from their faces and adjusted the blankets around them. Despite her exhaustion, she could not rest fully. She had a plan in her mind, a way to move her family to a place where they could finally be safe. The rancher emerged from the porch, carrying a small bundle of supplies he had prepared for them. He had packed dried meat, bread, water, and a few extra blankets. He placed them on the ground near the barn and motioned for the mother to come outside. "I have made some preparations," he said quietly. "If you are ready, I can help you leave this place. There is a safe path I know, away from soldiers and towns that might question you. It will not be easy, but it is possible." The mother looked at him, her eyes wide with gratitude and a hint of fear. "Are you sure it is safe?" she asked softly. "I do not want to put my children in danger." The rancher nodded. "It is the best option we have. I will guide you, and we will move quietly. The desert can be harsh, but I know the land. I will do everything I can to keep you safe." The mother took a deep breath and nodded. "Then we will go," she said firmly. She gathered her children and secured their few belongings. The older child held the small bundle tightly, while the younger one clung to her mother's skirt. Despite their fear, the children trusted the rancher, as their mother did, and that trust gave them courage. Before leaving, the rancher checked the barn and yard one last time. He wanted to ensure that nothing was left behind that could betray their presence. He also wanted to make sure the family understood the path ahead. The route would be long and difficult, with few water sources and little shade. It required patience, careful observation, and steady movement. But he knew they could make it if they followed his guidance. They began their journey just after sunrise. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a mixture of rocky ridges, dry washes, and sparse vegetation. The rancher led the way, moving quietly and deliberately. The mother followed closely, keeping her children near. Every step was measured, every movement cautious. They could not afford to draw attention. As they traveled, the rancher shared small pieces of advice. "If you see dust in the distance, stop and watch," he said. "Do not make noise, and do not move until it passes. The desert can hide many dangers, but it also protects those who pay attention." The mother nodded, absorbing every word. She had learned to read danger quickly in her life, but the rancher's knowledge of the land and its patterns was extraordinary. She realized that without his guidance, their chances of reaching safety would be much lower. The children walked quietly, their small feet making soft impressions in the sand. The older child occasionally glanced at the rancher, asking questions in a whisper about the land, the animals, or the path ahead. The rancher answered patiently, understanding that curiosity and learning were part of surviving in a harsh environment. By midday, the sun had risen high, turning the desert into a shimmering, almost blinding landscape. The rancher led them to a small, shaded area beneath a few sparse trees. They rested, drank water, and ate small portions of the food he had brought. The mother tended to the children, brushing dust from their hair and checking their clothing. She felt a deep gratitude for the rancher's guidance and courage. Without him, she knew they would have been lost. As they continued their journey, the desert seemed to shift around them. Rocks gave way to sandy washes, and the wind carried faint sounds in the distance. The rancher paused several times to observe the terrain, making adjustments to their path to avoid potential danger. He remained vigilant, aware that even the slightest mistake could expose them. Hours passed, and the family moved steadily, relying on the rancher's knowledge. The mother noticed that despite the physical strain and the heat, her children remained calm. The presence of the rancher, a strong and steady figure, gave them reassurance. She realized that trust was as important as caution, and in this moment, she trusted him completely. As evening approached, the sky turned shades of pink and orange. They reached a small, hidden valley, protected by rocky outcrops and shaded by sparse trees. It was a place the rancher knew well, a safe haven where soldiers and settlers rarely traveled. He helped the family settle, showing them where to rest, where to find water, and how to create a small fire safely. The mother knelt beside her children, helping them drink water and rest. She looked at the rancher with deep gratitude. "Thank you," she said softly. "I do not know how we could have made it without you. You have saved us." The rancher nodded, though he did not speak much. His actions had been enough. Words were unnecessary. He had guided them safely across dangerous land, protected them from harm, and ensured they reached a place where they could finally rest. Night fell, and the valley became quiet and calm. The mother and her children slept under the stars, feeling a sense of safety for the first time in many days. The rancher remained nearby, keeping watch, alert to any movement or sound that might signal danger. He felt a quiet satisfaction, knowing that his efforts had made a real difference in their lives. Over the next few days, the family settled into the hidden valley. They found small streams of water, edible plants, and safe spots to rest. The mother taught her children to move quietly and to respect the land. She continued to marvel at the rancher's knowledge, his careful planning, and his unwavering courage. She realized that he had acted selflessly, risking his own safety to protect them. The rancher visited them each day, bringing small supplies and checking on their well-being. He taught the mother how to recognize signs of approaching danger and how to use the land to their advantage. He showed her how to create simple signals and safe hiding spots, ensuring that they could protect themselves even if he could not be present. As days passed, the bond between the rancher and the family grew stronger. There was no need for elaborate words or gestures. Trust and mutual respect had formed a connection deeper than explanation. The mother began to see him not just as a protector, but as a person of courage and integrity, someone who had chosen to act with kindness despite the risks. One evening, as the sun set behind the rocky outcrops, the mother spoke to the rancher. "We will need to move again soon," she said softly. "But we will always remember what you have done for us. You have given us more than safety. You have given us hope." The rancher nodded, feeling a quiet warmth in his chest. He had acted not for reward or recognition, but because it was the right thing to do. He had faced his own fears and past regrets, and in helping this family he had found a sense of purpose he had not felt in years. The mother smiled, watching her children play quietly nearby. "We will find a permanent place," she continued. "A place where we can live without fear. A place where we can live without fear. And when we do, we will carry the memory of your courage with us." The rancher remained silent, knowing that words could not capture the weight of their shared experience. Actions had spoken more clearly than any sentence could. He had protected them, guided them, and ensured they reached safety. That was enough. Over the following weeks, the family grew stronger and more confident. They learned to navigate the desert, to find food and water, and to live quietly in a harsh land. The rancher continued to visit, offering guidance and support, but also allowing them space to grow independent. His quiet presence reminded them that even in a world full of danger, kindness and courage could prevail. Finally, the day came when the mother felt confident that her family could move on safely. They packed their few belongings and prepared to leave the hidden valley. The rancher accompanied them part way, ensuring that the path ahead was clear. He watched as they moved steadily, the children walking beside their mother, their small faces bright with hope and determination. Before they parted, the mother turned to the rancher. "We will never forget you," she said softly. "You saved our lives and showed us that even in the hardest times, there is goodness in the world." The rancher nodded, his eyes reflecting both pride and quiet emotion. "Take care of each other," he said. "Be careful and trust your instincts. You are stronger than you know." The family continued on their journey, disappearing into the desert with the confidence that safety and a future awaited them. The rancher watched until they were out of sight, feeling a sense of fulfillment and quiet peace. He had faced danger, acted with courage, and made a difference. That was enough for him. As the sun set over the desert, painting the sky with shades of orange and red, the rancher returned to his property.